How do I pronounce your name? Is Inessa?
Inessa, yes.
And your last name?
Lurye.
Lurye. Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome again to PLG Disrupt. We're so happy to have you here all again. I'm with the amazing Inessa Lurye, VP of Product Management at Yesware, and she will be talking about building discoverability and onboarding into feature launches. So launching a new feature or improvement isn't enough to drive customer value. In this session by PLG Disrupt, Inessa Lurye, VP of Product at Yesware, will explain how product teams can build discoverability and onboarding into a product launch. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome again. As I see, the session's key takeaways are the different types of discoverability by feature type and goal, the importance of measuring impact, building room for iteration and learning, as well as linking discoverability in feature and product retention. It's an honor for us to have you here. I give you the floor now, and then we talk again for the Q&A. Okay?
Perfect. Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye from me.
Bye. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to chat with you about really consciously thinking about what a good product onboarding experience looks like, not when you initially join a product, but when you are building a new feature or an enhancement to an existing feature set. And I'm thinking of the analogy that a lot of people use, and it's if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, did it actually fall? And if you are building features right now without really thinking about what that initial discovery for the user will be and how you'll drive activation and engagement, you are probably short-circuiting yourself and undercutting the potential success of that feature. I want to tell you a little bit about the journey that we've had at Yesware as we've made this transition to thinking about onboarding and activation more broadly. And in order to do that, I want to tell you about Yesware because all of the examples I'm using are contextual within our context. So Yesware helps sales leaders, whether they're sales managers, sales individual account executives, or account managers be more successful. And by more successful, I mean spend more time with their customers and prospects, streamline their sales workflows so they're doing the most high value work, and make sense of all the data so we can help really guide and develop their sales strategy. Our product is very much integrated into a user's email inbox, and it's a product that's used daily. And the reason that's important is it's important when we're thinking about and considering the type of features and the way that we want to develop onboarding and the onboarding experience. So how frequently your feature is used and your product is used, what's the context is going to be really important in ensuring that you're matching the right type of onboarding and discovery. Yesware is product-led, so it really just takes minutes to get started, to get value from the product. Individuals buy the product themselves. You don't need a top-down touch sales motion. There's a free trial that users can then take some actions and then extend that trial if they are able to complete a specific set of activities. There's upgrade motions within the product. Individuals get more value from it when they're using it, not just as a person, but as a person that is a member of a team. And that value increases over time. A little bit of context there. So now let's frame our conversation. So much of product-led growth literature talks about initial product onboarding. How do you get users from your website to your product, drive activation? You're thinking about making sure that the drop-offs at every stage of the funnel are as small as possible and that users get really fast time to value so they don't just drop off after the first couple minutes or the first couple days. There's a lot on that, and Yesware has focused a lot on this aspect. It's obviously very critical to the business. But what we've done most recently, about in the last 2 years or so, is taken the best of the tools from initial onboarding and started thinking about them systemically and in a way that's very interwoven and holistic when we apply them to existing features, and to driving discovery when you build new features and improve existing ones. So what I want to say is, don't be too eager to ship new products without consciously investing in this type of discovery and activation first. You may think that this is a shortcut, and there's certainly ways to experiment here and not do it initially and see what kind of engagement you get, but you think you're leaving lots of value on the table if you're not thinking about that more holistically. What are some of our initial onboarding tools? These things should be relatively familiar to many of you. We spend a lot of time thinking about how do we optimize the sign-up workflow and make sure that there's fewer drops in the funnel. We've seen questionnaires when you start a new product experience, and these are used to personalize the experience for you, to gather data for the company. There's lots of getting started guides, notifications that are driving magic moments, product tours, embedded content, your traditional onboarding marketing emails. So lots of tool sets. These are just a few. But what I want to ask is, share with you different ways that we've adjusted and adopted and changed these tool sets in the context of driving activation, awareness, engagement, and retention. And when you step back and you ask yourself, what are you seeking to achieve with this new product? Where are the drop-offs and points of friction happening? How much do you want to invest in this particular experience? And thus, how are you going to drive discovery there? And how will you measure the impact? Like, you want to ask all of these questions when you look at each of these sample ways in which you can drive engagement. I'm going to go through some of these very specifically, just to give everyone a real sense of some concrete examples. This is the most basic one. You launch a new feature and you want your users to know about it. You send an email through your product marketing function or your marketing function that tells them about this product. It gives you the space to tell the story and to really show how frequently you're updating the product and making really valuable improvements. Here, I absolutely encourage folks, like at the very basic level, to make sure that this content is personalized, whether it's by persona, individual versus manager, by role, by user behavior, those that really engage with data, those that don't engage with data, so that the messaging that you're providing in your marketing and email communications about product launches is as fitted to the needs and the jobs that your particular customer is seeking to do. It's obviously very easy to experiment with this kind of thing, but as everyone knows, our marketing rates in terms of even product update type of email marketing rates are relatively low. So you're only reaching maybe 20, maybe 30% of your customers. Obviously, it depends on the context and your company. One area that we at Yesware have taken this, which I think has been really interesting and successful, is instead of just having general product announcements, and we thought about how can these messages be customized? How can the content of these messages be customized and tailored to the audience? And how can it provide unique content or insights that are not currently available in the product, while at the same time trying to drive discovery with a particular feature? So here's an example. We have a lot of data in the product itself that tells salespeople what's going on and how they're performing. But we also have this weekly email that takes some of those very specific crystallized insights and it varies in terms of what the content is and what the highlights are, and sends them to individual users and managers, that content's slightly different, every single week at a particular time. And then we allow users to go to the reporting within the product from here after some point of information or point of content or context has spurred their interest. What we see in this kind of thing is that we have open rates week over week over 2x the open rates that you have with regular email marketing, even product announcement kind of email. So that tells us that we're providing consistent value to users. And I know in times where this has gone out a little late or there was some issue with the product, we've had people writing into support and asking us for this. So this is an extension of value, and something that I'd really encourage people to think about when you think about onboarding and feature discovery is how can this be an extension of value to the user that is also driving that discovery and feature engagement and activation. Obviously, you don't want to just update users in their email box in terms of sending email communications. Lots of products, Yesware included, have built-in product updates that allow users in the context of using the product or feature to see what new things have been developed and to actually engage with them directly and contextually. So I see that there's a new dashboard. I can go and click and go to that dashboard in one smooth and engaging motion, and I'm introduced to the concept of that dashboard contextually within this experience. What I think is really valuable here is the way that you can architect and measure how this engagement happens. So we can tell, and we've iterated around this over time significantly, that we want to bundle certain messages and updates together and not have them happen too frequently, like every day or every week, because that creates too much noise and people are less engaged, as for example, in that product context. Or we can see that how many people who've seen this go to the particular feature and set up the action that they're incented to do here. We can also see that what we've also seen that it's really valuable to be able to personalize this. As I mentioned, if you don't use a particular feature, or if you're in one platform, if you're an individual or a manager, we can personalize the content that you could see in an update, whatever it may be in your context, so that your updates are most relevant to you and less versus something generic for the whole product overall. You do need to manage this kind of system in terms of product updates, whether you build it yourself or you're using a third-party tool, so that this becomes a thoughtful part of a go-to-market and that you're measuring it and iterating to see what works. What we do see anecdotally is that those people who engage with our product updates are more retentive. This is obviously correlative. I can't say it's causal, but it's an interesting thing that we see in the data. Now let's chat about more kind of feature-specific items. How do you actually drive discovery? Initially, lots of folks have different forms of notifications to drive discovery at a glance. These could be new badges or some forms of icons at a high-level menu, contextually within the product with some guided information. These are things that are super easy to implement, very quick to test if it works or if it doesn't work. But what you have to consider with this is how noisy does this become, and what part of this is, how does this feel as part of an overall user experience? Is it contextual? Is it too loud? Do we have lots of new badges and icons all over the product? And what does that user experience look like when you have all of those pieces in play versus just your product or feature? Think about this holistically. Then we move on to more, I would say maybe traditional but holistic aspects around product discovery. Product onboarding cards, such as what you see here, which you see in the context of a product. It tells you a little bit about the value. It can be dismissed. It gives you a place to tell a little bit of a story, to also showcase your brand. Empty states, which are a really great way to showcase your brand and engage and tell users about the value of what could be, and little walkthroughs that someone can engage with at various, if they choose to, essentially. These are quick, they're contextual, and they put some control in the hands of the user. It's a little bit harder to measure impact with this. And so part of this type of work, not in all of these instances, it has to be what's your design stance and what's your brand stance when you have when you're launching a particular product? How do you create a cohesive brand experience? So whether an empty state is truly empty, or if it has some guidance, how do you, what's your take? What's your point of view there? And then make that a point of view that's consistent and holistic after doing some testing for your whole organization. For us, we've certainly found that once we've tested some of these aspects, it was really valuable to make them reusable design components, or if you're using a third-party tool, to do this so that you can do it across many features with ease after doing an initial investment. Because if this is a thing that you have to budget, and the budget is pretty high every time you launch a feature, it becomes more prohibitively expensive and you tend not to do it, versus if this becomes a standard. And we know that when we launch a new report, there's an onboarding card, or there is, when we have we always have an empty state and it always has a call to action, etc. And here's the components that go into that. The barrier to execution becomes much lower. A set of things that we're actually experimenting with more recently and seeing a lot of success is bringing the idea of a getting started guide, not to the getting started with the product overall, but to getting started with a new feature, or a feature that has multiple steps of complexity. So what you're seeing here on your screen is Yesware's meeting scheduler. So this is essentially allows you to set up different meeting types, allows you to send a very quick and easy link to your customers or prospects, and allows them to book you in a very seamless motion. But in order to do the initial setup, there's multiple steps, and they can be hidden or complicated for someone that may not have done this kind of thing in the past. So what we recently launched is a getting started guide that's feature specific, that guides users through the process, that lets them preview particular pages, that provides additional set of resources. And what we saw here is very specific difference in activation. So we were really trying to see of users who go to the meeting to set up their meeting scheduler, what proportion of those successfully do it. And we could see what happened before we had a getting started guide and after. We see a significant and measurable difference in their activation, which is what this process and what this experiment was trying to drive. So taking something from initial onboarding and coupling it to something that you do in as part of feature discovery and activation. Few other examples. These may be more specific to your product, but I think they could be interesting and a little bit different. So for Yesware, we have certain content that users create and reuse on the product. For example, templates, which are initial messages or follow-up messages that they use or reuse and customize. So instead of making an empty template state, think of it almost as an empty state, we've provided and preceded a set of initial content, whether it's from your product, it's sourced from your community, whatever it may be. And this allows users not only to have a set of content to start with, but it allows them to discover the value of the feature and potentially best practices of how to use it. So here you could see how we're using particular like merge fields or empty fields that users can fill in and personalize. Or you could see best practices of sending a cold outreach email or a follow-up email. And that's embedded in the content that we provide, so it feels less pushy, but more value add in a way that also drives discovery. And a final aspect that I want to touch on, which is a little bit more, let's say, advanced, is how do we bring value to users at the right time and the right value. So Yesware, we developed a system of contextual nudges, essentially where we're able to look at what a user is doing at a particular point in time and then make suggestions that make sense for them. So I'm going to give you one as an example. It's not necessarily one that we're doing, but it's very specific. So if I'm writing an email and I say something like, which times are you available to meet? We can pop up a contextual nudge that says, have you set up your meeting scheduler experience yet? set it up now so you could just put in this link and get going. It's in the context of the user's workflow, and thus you're driving value at the right time in a very low touch way. You have to have, obviously, a lot of these kinds of scenarios in order to make contextual nudges work and be worth the investment, and to make sure that they're well integrated into your user's workflow and not distracting or sort of too attention grabbing. But I think it's a great way to drive discovery in a way that meets probably some of your business goals, but specifically the value that your customers are trying to get from the product and the product experience. So let's just take a quick step back, and I walk through a whirlwind of products and tools that are part of a toolkit to use to drive discovery and engagement and activation with features, particularly new features or feature improvements. But the bottom line is that onboarding shouldn't be thought of just as an initial part of a sign-up experience. It's part and parcel of everything that you build and do. So I'd really encourage you the next time you're building a product to think about that holistic experience, not just what the thing does, but how users experience it, discover it, activate, and retain. And then what tools can you use, whether ones you're using already or new ones, maybe some ones that I mentioned today, to try to hit at the right parts of what of your objectives. If you're trying to do discovery, there's one set of tools. If you're trying to drive activation, it's another set of tools. And try them out, instrument it so you can measure, because sometimes frequently your intuition will be wrong, and use them to improve your product experience, but to give your features and the things that you're building a real shot at success, because they are discovered and engaged with by your customers in a way that's holistic and contextual. I'm going to pause here, and I'm excited to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It was really insightful. So I have two questions from the audience. The first is, how do you optimize internally the onboarding getting started guide?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So for optimizing the getting started guide, you're looking ultimately for what your outcome is. And so for us, for example, it is the percentage of people that complete the getting started guide, or the percentage of people that convert. This would be initially from a trial user to a paid user. And then what you're looking at, or for the calendaring example, we're looking at, this is a pre-post kind of experiment, but you can also do this as an A/B test, depending on what you're trying to achieve, is what proportion of users landed on that page to set up a calendar link, and what proportion actually completed that action successfully. And so then you're seeing, okay, with this getting started guide, or this set of steps, or without it, the proportion is A. With it, it's B. Now I can try to experiment. Maybe I'll add certain things. Maybe I'll adjust the layout. Maybe I'll remove certain steps to see what impact it has on your desired outcome. But you should have a clear sense of what your desired outcome and what you're measuring before you instrument the work, and so that you're not trying to figure that out in the midst of the work itself.
Okay, very nice. So the second question is, how can product data be incorporated into the onboarding experience and feature launches to optimize return on investment?
Yeah, so absolutely. So for us, we wouldn't do any of these things, with some sort of minor exceptions, like an initial marketing email, without knowing the outcome that it's trying to drive, and without being able to measure that outcome. Because if you can't measure the outcome you're driving, it just becomes this conversation really around personal opinions and preferences. And we certainly want to move it away from that. So let's take an example of a customized onboarding email. A customized data email that I showed that was really specific insights to users, not just general email. And what we say we're trying to drive is users that engage with that, but actually specifically use that as a platform to engage with our in-product reporting. If the belief is, I see something interesting here, and then I go from here to actually engage with in-product reporting. So you'd instrument that. So what we're seeing is you're not just measuring the open rate of this, you're measuring the number of users every week that engage with in-product reporting after seeing this, and in a direct flow. And you would set that as a particular objective that's connected, and then you're able to tell that story or say, hey, it's working, it's not working, why and why not.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you so much. And thank you especially for your insightful presentation, for being here with us today. We wish you all the best for your future endeavors, and we really hope to see you again in one of our future events.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
So stay with us, because the next session, it will be a bit later. It's a fireside chat about agile product marketing with two amazing product marketers from Elementor and VMware. So stay tuned for the next session. Bye for now.